Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Unconditional Love.
Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my contrarian counterpart, Julio Oliveira. Here, continuing on our summer movie journey, and it's another PJ party, Julio, and what a party it is.
It's not a wedding party.
It's certainly not. It's in Chicago, though, so it's we're recapturing some of the atmosphere of my best friend's wedding. And Kathy Bates, we don't talk about her too often, so it's not her debut, is it?
No, because we did Titanic, where she
oh yes, we made that
every scene.
Yes, and Julie Andrews, though, she's not been on here before, has she?
If she has, it was nowhere near as memorable as what she does in this movie with her 5 minutes of screen time.
And returning at long last, Peter Sarsgaard.
Not seen since the Green Lantern episode?
I don't think so.
Man. I mean, this is before he achieved the status of a supervillain in a Hollywood blockbuster. Here he is just a regular villain in what I guess was an indie movie? I don't know, I'm assuming.
The New Line Cinema is not an indie movie distribution company, my friend.
Oh, was this a blockbuster though?
No, and we'll talk about that in the second half. And if you think we're just naming names, there's more people than that in this movie. Specifically, Dan Aykroyd and Rupert Everett, and a cameo by Barry Manilow for really no reason at the end of this movie.
Well, because you have to. Once you don't have Jonathan Pryce to come out and sing that last song, you need Barry Manilow. That's the next level down from Pryce, Manilow.
And Meredith Eaton. I don't know if I know her from anything else.
Now and forever, I will know her from this movie.
There you go.
She is the Rupert Everett of this movie, even though this movie has a Rupert Everett. You know what I mean? Like, My Best Friend's Wedding had Rupert Everett as the breakthrough secondary character that steals the movie, and I think Unconditional Love has Meredith Eaton as that character. And Rupert Everett has graduated to where he's, I guess, the Cameron Diaz in this movie.
Sure.
This only makes sense if you've seen My Best Friend's Wedding.
Yes. All right, Julio, how'd you end up watching this? I watched this on YouTube. Had to rent it. It's available to rent, but it's not anywhere really streaming wise. Did you do the same thing?
I actually had it on my Prime. I had forgotten that I had it as part of my Prime collection because I think I mentioned it when we were talking about this movie at some point, and this will definitely come up during Real Talk once we go more in depth about the origins of this movie in my life. But we had a friend visiting us last year, and this is her favorite movie ever. And she was like, "Oh, you need to watch it. You need to watch it." And so I just bought it. I bought it on Amazon Prime, and then we watched it, and I completely forgot that I owned it. Like, I thought I'd rented it, but I guess I bought it. And so when I was getting ready to rent it again, I was pleasantly surprised to find out that, no, it's already there. It's there, Alex. I own it for as long as Amazon will let me own it.
Do they legitimately like it, or is it like this is a fun movie, like in its insanity?
I mean, I'm pretty sure she loves it. Unless she was just putting on her own Contrarians podcast when she was telling me about it.
Well, it was released in 2002, 2003. Looks like in the States in 2003. Again, directed by PJ Hogan, written by PJ Hogan and Jocelyn Morehouse, who was a producer on Muriel's Wedding. Other writing credits of hers include The Dressmaker and The Fabulous Four, and director of 1,000 Acres with Michelle Pfeiffer, and How to Make an American Quilt with Winona Ryder.
Hey, that's a movie that almost made it into the Summer of Winona.
She, of course, was on the awards trail with Muriel's Wedding, as was PJ Hogan, as that became quite the sensation. Can't say the same for this one, though. Neither critically nor financially held in a regard anywhere near that of Muriel's Wedding. A 14% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And Julio, if I saw correctly, it looks like only about 7 reviews comprise that score.
Yes, and the saddest part is that 2 of those are from the same guy.
He doubled down on it?
No, I think that he realized that one of his original review had a broken link, so then he resubmitted it.
God bless. Did you read both of his reviews?
Well, no, because one was just a broken link.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But I did pull him up. It's our old friend Emmanuel Levy. Before we get to him, though, I have him on second place. First place is David Rooney from Variety, who says, a misconceived comedy that, despite a warmly empathetic performance from Kathy Bates, never makes its characters an orthodox chemistry gel. Warmly empathetic performance from Kathy Bates. How often do you think of Kathy Bates as a warm person, a warm character? Because I always think of her as kind of a cold-hearted badass.
I mean, you don't get a role like her performance in Misery, and people often associate you with kindness. And also, Joan, was that her name on The Office?
Yep.
Yeah, she wasn't too nice on there either. I mean, she had a bit of warmth to her, but she was pretty dicey.
Does she precede or succeed Idris Elba?
She comes after. Idris is season 5.
Okay.
Oh, and Kathy Bates, I'm sorry. She, of course, has been widely celebrated, was part of a widely celebrated film here on the Contrarians, Fred Claus.
That's right. She is Mrs. Claus. Mama Claus.
Isn't she?
Okay, well, that was warm and empathetic.
Yeah. Revolutionary Road. I'm trying to remember if she's. No one is warm and empathetic in that movie, to be fair.
About Schmidt. She gets naked with Jack Nicholson in the hot tub.
About Schmidt is one of those movies. It's a blind spot of mine that I've never seen. I'm not.
Well, I just spoiled the biggest surprise in it. You get full frontal.
That's not a surprise. That was what everyone was talking about at the time. It's like,
okay,
Kathy Bates gets naked in this movie. I was like, all right.
It's very warm and empathetic nudity.
Yeah, warm and empathetic doesn't come to mind. Kathy Bates, like, for the entirety of my life, has just been in so many things that I always just think of her of, hey, it's Kathy Bates. So,
do you think of her as a singer? I guess that's the real question.
No, and neither does Dan Aykroyd in this movie.
Dan Aykroyd is all of us, and he goes on that journey with us. Let's go to Emmanuel Levy from EmmanuelLevy.com, who resubmitted his review and said, part fantasy, part mystery, part women's melodrama, part musical, but not satisfying on any of these levels. Part women's melodrama? I didn't realize that was a genre.
You can just say made for Lifetime,
So if there's a women's melodrama, is there a man's melodrama?
Yeah, it's the Fast and Furious franchise.
I was going to say Good Time.
Oh, no. Good Time's just a great film.
It's just men's drama.
Yeah, it's for men.
Dude, that's as far as we went with Rotten Tomatoes. And then just to make it a trilogy, I pulled a negative quote from Letterboxd. And this is from Michael. Gave the movie 1.5 stars and says, where did PJ Hogan go so wrong? Unconditional Love misses almost every beat. Painful to watch so much good talent going to waste. The cinematic equivalent of elevator music. This dude is harsher than either of the previous 2 quotes, and those were real critics.
Cinematic equivalent of elevator music. That's an interesting one.
I think that's not right, because the whole thing about the elevator music is that it's bland. And you may not like this movie. You may like this movie. Whatever you fall on, you can't say that it's bland. This movie swings and swings and swings. There's no blandness there. It's just a lot of overreaches.
This is certainly, what do I always say, Julio? The worst thing a movie can be is boring. And brother, this movie certainly ain't boring.
PJ Hogan heard you and took those words to heart.
No shit.
He answered the age-old question, how do you follow up my best friend's wedding? It's like, they'll never see this coming.
And they didn't. It was finished for like 3 years before anyone saw it.
We have to talk, Grace.
But I'm just on hold for these tickets. There's only 5, and I'm one. It's Victor Fox. It's for the special for his taping here in Chicago. It's the Lark from Lark.
We need to discuss our marriage.
All right. So, Unconditional Love. I'm going to go ahead and start off by reading the plot synopsis. Because this movie's insane and I want to quantify how insane it is before we get into it. So Grace Beasley, that is Kathy Bates, has been content with her life as a housewife. One morning, Grace wins tickets to a concert by her favorite singer being Victor Fox, played by Jonathan Pryce, who is like a showman, Elton John, Barry Manilow type. Grace is ecstatic, but soon learns that her husband is leaving her. Her husband is Dan Aykroyd, who plays Max Beasley. And also that her son is leaving his wife. Her daughter-in-law is her best friend in this movie, Maudie, played by Meredith Eaton. Grace arrives at the concert only to learn that it has been canceled due to the murder of the singer. Grace decides to travel to England for the singer's funeral. She soon meets the closeted singer's former lover, and this, of course, is Rupert Everett, who plays Dirk Simpson. And they plot to secretly change his burial clothing to his beloved pink bathrobe. Grace and Dirk then leave for Chicago to track down and kill the crossbow killer. This is who killed Victor Fox and is a serial killer on the loose in Chicago in the universe of this film, who has been murdering singers. The adventure transforms Grace, and she faces the problems of her marriage with a new outlook on the meaning of love. And if those sentences just went places that you weren't expecting the next one to go, just imagine sitting down and watching this movie completely Baccarat blind.
It's a roller coaster. Every time you think you're settling in and you figure out where the movie's going to take you, it just takes a left turn. It's like, nope, gotcha. You didn't even mention Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews as herself has 2 appearances in this movie.
I guess she's not as herself. She's there as like
she's Julie Andrews.
The fever dream version of Julie Andrews.
Yes, I guess that's fair.
I think that you could make an argument that there's a lot of this movie that is probably just taking place in Kathy Bates' head. If you want to be really morbid, you could say the entire movie takes place in her head, which would explain why it's so
fantastical.
Yeah, but I also think that that's too easy and kind of reductive of what the movie's doing, right? Like it's just, oh well, of course it's all a dream, therefore the stakes are just not that high. I like to believe that what we see in this movie is something that's really happening in the real world, and it's just that in the world of the movie, magical realism is a thing. And so sometimes people do these wild things, like Julie Andrews showing up a couple of times to calm the crowds with her voice. But we'll get there. Alex, let's start where the movie starts, with Jonathan Pryce.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we've ever had them on the main feed. I mean, we obviously saw him in Glengarry Glen Ross when we did that video review. But Sir Jonathan Pryce, I can't think of him on our main feed.
No, I'm blanking as well. I'll look over his filmography here to see if he has appeared elsewhere. But yeah, he plays just a showman type singer. I couldn't tell who they were trying to evoke more. But like I said, I think the comparisons to Elton John and Barry Manilow are pretty fair.
I'll tell you what I thought, because this dude dies and the entire world seems to be thrown into chaos and mourning. Not just Kathy Bates, but everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
it reminded me of when we did the Strange Days episode. And one of the plot points there is that there's this rapper that is murdered by the cops and that incites riots and all that. And I remember when we were doing that episode, I said, that seems a little far-fetched. Do we even have in today's world a figure that would cause that? And you said Taylor Swift. And I said, I stand corrected. So as I was watching this movie and that thought came again, I was like, really? Could a singer, like a musician dying, really plunge the world into this collective misery? And then I heard your voice again, Taylor Swift.
And I'm sure I also said in that episode too, I'd say Bruce would be up there because I think there would be a lot of Bruce is such a global icon. Oh, Paul McCartney. When Paul McCartney passes, that's going to be like a international day of mourning, a global day of mourning, as it were. It's a bit different in this case too, because this Victor Fox fellow is murdered with a crossbow. So I think the shocking nature of it is what kind of dominates and steals the headlines and attention. The bartender in this who plays is it Scully on
Yep.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's like, they're going to blame Chicago for this, you know?
Chicago, the city of fireworks. Is that how it is, Alex? You've given me some pretty detailed reports of your trips to Chicago, and you never mentioned fireworks.
I mean, I saw fireworks indoors at the shows I went to, and when the White Sox hit a home run. But yeah, never like that. I've never just been in my hotel room and then like heart attack inducing fright comes from just random ass fireworks going off.
Have you ever been in your hotel room and the window washer guy is just staring at you?
Well, I was going to say, no. I wish I had stayed in a hotel where Peter Sarsgaard just drops by cleaning, washing the windows. Because that's what he does here. This big high-rise apartment that Dan Aykroyd and Kathy Bates has, Peter Sarsgaard is the window washer, and he's very young. His hair is very
alive.
Yeah, he looks like a boy in this movie. Like, that's the thing of even in Garden State, which would come several years after this, he looks a bit more like a man. He looks like a kid in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
His hair looks like when your mom does your hair up for photo day at school, but then you rebel and like mess it up on the way to class or way to the.
As soon as she is out of sight,
exactly. He looks at her, Kathy Bates, that is, the Sarsgaard looks at her like longingly at some points. And I was like, is this going to take a direction of like Sarsgaard trying to court Kathy Bates?
Dude, I'm in.
Sadly, it does not.
That would have been an amazing movie. I mean, this one is as well, but there's no... The romance comes from a different angle. Dan Aykroyd doesn't look at Kathy Bates the way that Peter Sarsgaard looks at Kathy Bates.
I have to leave you, Grace. And I know I will feel terrible when I walk out that door. But I also know I will feel more alive than I do right now.
He's a great actor, Dan Aykroyd, because I was... As we do when we watch these movies, right? You always think, okay, what have we done with this person on the show? And of course, the only thing that could come to mind was when he had a penis for a nose in Nothing But Trouble. That character obviously is very different from the regular dude that he's playing in this movie. So, range.
Yeah, the movie starts. I had no idea where this was going. Again, I knew nothing about it other than some of the people involved. So I thought it might have been like this story of the difficulty of being with someone for so long and, wanting to stay committed or wanting to stay with them, because he obviously, the first shot of him, he's not happy with his life. And he just tells his wife he's done with her and that he's got a new apartment or something that he's moving into. And Kathy Bates' day just is not good. And she finally, within a short amount of time, she does get the ticket to go see the show, but then her favorite artist gets murdered. Dan Aykroyd's not really there to console her.
Were you I wouldn't say sympathetic, but at least could you understand the Dan Aykroyd dilemma, or were you instantly against him for leaving this poor woman behind?
I don't know what that's like. I hope to be as old as Dan Aykroyd is in this movie, and I don't know if I'm gonna have the same quandaries in life or issues, but it started the movie on a very real note. I'll say that.
I thought it was a little condescending that he breaks it off with her and gives her the number of his therapist.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
When when the news of the murder breaks, Grace and Maudie go to try to see the crime scene. And did you notice that's the same South Wacker Drive, I believe is the name of it in Chicago. That's the same underground tunnel from The Dark Knight.
All right, but PJ Hogan got there first.
He definitely did. And for way less money, I would think.
That was probably the biggest, because at first, I'm not going to say that the murder of Jonathan Pryce is played for laughs, but it's definitely kind of whimsical. And this movie's whimsical all throughout, but because they don't tell them right away that Victor Fox got murdered. They just say, hey, we have to cancel. And then she's at the supermarket buying gazillion sodas. And then I guess that's the thing, right? They announce it over the PA in the supermarket, which I guess goes back to like if Paul McCartney or Bruce Springsteen died, like do you think that HEB would just like give the announcement to everybody that's shopping that day?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end.
But anyway, she passes out, and it's, obviously it's somebody died, and it's a big deal. Jonathan Pryce got killed, but there's something humorous to seeing Kathy Bates kind of like pass out at an HEB, or the Chicago equivalent of HEB. And so I thought it was like, oh, well, it's kind of funny, I guess. When it gets real, Alex, is when Maudie and Kathy Bates get to the crime scene, because, she's like, oh, let's go take a look. And you see the wall, where he got shot, and the blood's still there. And that's the part that shook me. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's that kind of movie. We're going to swing widely from funny, whimsical stuff to the real shit. Did it also shake you? Or were you already shaken from the moment that they announced that Pryce was dead?
Just the introduction of a serial killer on the loose in Chicago named the Crossbow Killer. I was just like, what is this? Because then it quickly turns back to the Kathy Bates, adventure or journey to self-understanding, where she gets told that poignant expression of a life lived in fear isn't much fun. And this inspires her to travel to England to attend the funeral and, learn from there, go on. So I, at no point during this movie, up until this point, or for the remaining hour and a half of it, was able to get a grip of any sorts on it.
PJ Hogan kept dancing circles around you.
It's true.
Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yes, I was anticipating a Muhammad Ali quote to be used in describing this movie coming into it.
I was bummed when she went to England for only one reason, and that is that we left Meredith Eaton behind. I was glad once she came back into the movie, but at first I was like, oh no, because obviously PJ Hogan, I didn't know that he was going to keep swerving, so I assumed that the rest of the movie was going to take place in England. So I'm like, oh, Kathy Bates is just leaving everybody else behind. Dan Aykroyd, her daughter-in-law Meredith Eaton, her son, her grandson, what's the kid's name? Pookie?
Pokey?
Pokey.
I thought it was like a dog, the way they were calling it, like dropping Pokey off at daycare. It's like, okay. Well, yeah, she leaves them behind, but who we pick up in this journey is first of two cameos from Julie Andrews, who's sitting next to Kathy Bates on the flight that's experiencing a high level of turbulence. And everyone on the plane is starting to freak out a bit. It seems like some pretty severe weather that they're going through, even to the point where one of the stewardesses like falls over and shit starts falling out of the overhead bins. And Julie Andrews stands up and says, well, that's enough. And she slams one of the overhead bins shut, and she just walks and opens the cockpit and goes right in. Important to call out, this movie was filmed in 1999, early 2000, back in the days where you could just walk into the cockpit of an airplane.
Do not try this stunt today.
Do not. She gets in there and gets on the PA. It's like, this is Julie Andrews, and is it Getting to Know You? She starts singing. Yes. Getting to Know You, and then everyone on the plane just kind of starts singing along. And there's an incredible line of, I think it's like a married couple holding hands, are worried, and the wife says to the husband, Julie Andrews is in the cockpit, and he goes, well, thank God.
You are precisely my cup of tea.
My cup of tea.
Getting to know you. That's great, everyone, but louder.
Come on, darling, sing.
When I am with.
I think it's fair to say that this is the moment where the movie just grabs you by the shoulders, stares you into the eyes, and just goes, "Are you with me?"
Yeah.
And if you nod yes, then you're gonna be okay. Because it's just now you're in the same wavelength of PJ Hogan and his team, and that wavelength is anything goes, anything can happen. Here we go to England, a mystical land. Do you think is it really England, Alex, or did they green screen England?
From what I read, they actually shot this in England. That was definitely Chicago, but yeah, the scenes of this were shot in England.
The contrast between the luscious green scenery in England and the dark, foreboding, serial killer infested streets of Chicago. It's very, very impressive.
So once her plane lands, she hops on a train because that's what you have to do in every movie that's made about being in England, is take a train. I've been told by my good buddy Joe Holbert that the train system is very real there. They try to diminish people driving, which I'm all for. But anyway, on the train ride, she finds a dedication in the newspaper to Victor, and it's a poem from DS, and I can't remember the verbatim, but the last line of it is it's something like "from above, unconditional love" or something like that, and it's just the phrase that lingers on is "unconditional love," and it's like it's like it's some sort of hot tub time machine
or some kind of Suicide Squad.
What do you think this is? Some sort of unconditional love? And she gets into town and she tries to get like a bouquet of flowers to dedicate and tries to use that same poem, but it's already taken. So she tracks down who wrote it, and we learn it's this DS fella who lives at the house that Victor Fox used to live in. She's told by the florist that he's the valet, and said very salaciously. And when she shows up to the house, sure enough, it's the Roops. It's Rupert Everett himself. Plays Dirk Simpson, DS. And we learn pretty quickly that he was the lover of Victor Fox, but it was closeted so. And shortly after this, we meet Victor Fox's family as Grace goes out to lunch with them, and we learn that they just absolutely refute and shut down the idea, refuse to accept that he could have been gay. And there's a bit of similar to some of the stuff we talked about with my best friend's wedding. Societal norms have changed a bit, and there's a bit of laughs had at the expense of the idea of someone being gay here. That's kind of uncomfortable to sit through. Of course,
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if because it never calls out exactly when the movie is taking place. Like, I knew it was 2002. Now you said that it was shot in 1999, right? So it's like pre new millennium. And I was like,
the cell phones definitely match up with a 99 2000 time frame.
You're right. There's beautiful bricks that will save your life. Because I thought that what they were going for, like the punchline is that these old British people are horrendously homophobic. And that is, you know what I mean? Like, the joke is not that Victor Fox was gay. The joke is that he was gay and they can't handle it. You know, the faces that they make, I thought that was just, the ridiculousness was on them. But I guess the line blurs on this side of, you know, when we're all these years later. I don't know how you experienced this, how this movie was experienced back in, you know, early 2000s by the 5 people that saw it. If they found that offensive, or if they were like, yep, that's how it is. Older people in England. I think it's the thing that's also funny is that he never runs into that problem, Rupert Everett, that is in the States, right? Like the discrimination and the homophobia is in England, but the United States is a very accepting place. Which, I mean, I guess maybe it's just Chicago. Maybe he went to the right spot in Chicago.
I mean, Chicago's a very liberal city.
Yeah, I mean, even the serial killers are very tolerant.
So she accuses him of being a squatter at this house. And Julio, help me out here. My note just says, what is happening? Because the family wants her to figure out or get him out of the house. What? Just explain the situation here.
I think it's as simple as they want to change the locks. Like, if you get him out of the house, we'll change the locks and he can't get back in. That was like there was something else. Like, they gave her a two-pronged mission. They're like, you go in there and you convince him to sell. Convince him to tell him that we're gonna give him money if he just disappears. And doesn't write a tell-all. Like, going back to Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen, if Paul McCartney had like a secret lover, and that lover, after his death, that lover took over Paul McCartney's house, and then the McCartney estate is trying to keep it secret, and they're like, hey, we'll pay this guy money, but he needs to disappear. He can't like write a book about his secret relationship with Paul McCartney or whatever. So that's number one. But then they're like, if you can't do that, at the very least, get him out of the house so we can change the locks, which is, I guess as basic as it gets.
So she goes to the house, breaks and enters, and like cleans it and makes them breakfast, because he has these like other friends of his, these derelicts living with him, and like mows the lawn and is trying to help them. And this somehow leads to them bonding.
She chops wood.
Yes, she's Swiss Army woman, Kathy Bates here. She does not do at all what they ask her to. And she quickly becomes friends with Dirk. And, we get some bonding sequences of them learning about each other's pasts. And, there's some nurturing going on. And he shows her around the house and the tiara and the pink bathrobe that we mentioned earlier. And we get the very zany and wacky sequence of them, trying to share a bike together, a bike ride into a pub in town, and the brakes go out. So there's a lot of hooting and hollering and flying off the road. It becomes not what I expected it to be at this point. And then when they're at the pub, we get this like Love is a Dream type dance sequence where it's like they're both dreaming that they're dancing with Victor Fox.
If we had met, I think I'd have liked you very much.
Victor, you were gay.
Ah, yes. There was that.
Again, Julio, this thing is like a greased up turkey that you're trying to put in the oven with your bare hands. It's just, you can't get a hold of it.
But the entire time, as the turkey slips and slides, you're having so much fun. So
yes, when that, like, as that's happening, different things are falling on it to make it better. Like different seasonings are falling off the shelf and shit, the spice rack, as it were. But it's still just like, I can't get a hold of this thing. That's, this is Mr. Burns using a fire hose, flying all over the place.
I know we have British listeners. So British listeners, is it true or is it not true that there's just these spontaneous sing-alongs in British pubs? Or do you know the answer, Alex? Because this movie posits that that's not true, but then they go and literally as they ride up to the pub, people are singing.
I'm sure there's events that people sing along to music at. I don't know. There could be worse stereotypes than being just joyous people that get drunk and sing together.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, for all the jokes and the reality of homophobia in the movie, when it's in the England part of it, there is one of the sweetest moments here. I guess it's when somebody approaches Dirk, Rupert Everett, and he braces himself to just be harassed, right? He openly admits that he was Jonathan Pryce's lover. And instead of being harassed or bullied or being met with aggression, everybody in the pub toasts Jonathan Pryce, Victor Fox, and there's acceptance. And it's like, I don't know if you could read it as it wasn't as bad as Rupert Everett thought, or maybe it was as bad, but the death of Victor Fox was such a big event that changed people, made them a little more tolerant, at least for that moment. But either way, it's a pretty sweet moment, right? Because you're expecting a fight or something, and instead, at least for those couple minutes, everybody is joined in their sorrow, I guess. So it was. I thought that was sweet, and it definitely sets you up for that turn, because the entire thing is that both Rupert Everett and Kathy Bates, from this point on, I guess we're halfway through the movie. Mm-hmm. They decide that they're going to go on this journey of reclaiming their identity. Right? He says, for all these years, all I've been is the valet or the secret lover, and all you've been is the wife. You don't have your own identity. And I would have thought that that was incredibly relatable to anybody watching the movie, for its audience. Maybe the problem was that it just, nobody got to see it. You said it was delayed, its release was delayed, and not many people, like the box office wasn't great. And it was not so much a problem of the quality of the movie, but the reach of the movie. Because midlife crisis, that is, bread and butter of this type of movie. And it's very well executed here because you have two really good actors. How do you feel about this Rupert Everett expanding? We saw him be funny and charming in My Best Friend's Wedding, but here he's giving a full meal.
Yeah, I feel like he has a lot more to work with in this, and he's got a lot more depth to his character because he comes into it suffering, and we kind of learn more about him as it goes along. As we mentioned, they find the body the night before the funeral and dress it up in his pink bathrobe that he liked. And then they skip town. They fly back to Chicago, and the funeral is happening on the television in O'Hare as they arrive back. And this does not please the family of Victor. It actually terrifies his sister to the point where she jumps over the body in the coffin to try to stop the press from taking pictures of it. And this is where Julie Andrews appears again and goes up on the altar at the church and starts singing again, Getting to Know You, to try to just loop everybody back in and, stop the shock and awe and make everyone happy, which I laughed out loud at this part, Julio.
I think the best part is that some people in the church start singing along.
Haven't you noticed? Suddenly I'm bright and crazy.
The idea that Julie Andrews is this one-trick pony whose one response to a crisis, to a big conflict, is to just grab a microphone and try to sing everybody into submission. It's just really funny.
It's genuinely hilarious.
And then she punches some dude that's taking pictures.
That's right. Back in Chicago, though, we get the mix-up humor of Maudie, Meredith Eaton, coming back to... She was like watering the plants at Grace's apartment, which has since been gutted. Dan Aykroyd just had it completely cleaned out. And Kathy Bates and Dirk, now Grace and Dirk, with their friendship as it is, they share a bed, and Maudie walks in and sees them and is, can't believe it. She thinks that Grace has found some, young stallion to shack up with. And this leads to a segment of comedy and, Kathy Bates running around shuffling, saying it's not what you think it is. And then this quickly takes yet another psychotic turn where the kind of laughs die down, and Kathy Bates asks Meredith Eaton, do you have a gun? Do you know where you can get a gun? Me and Dirk are going to hunt down and kill the crossbow killer. It's a bit shocking. My note says, what on earth?
Welcome to America.
That's the thing. And then later in the movie, Dirk goes to a gun shop. He's like, I'm British and I need a gun. And it cuts away. And in the next scene, he has a gun. This is 25 years ago, too.
Meredith already had a gun. It doesn't surprise me, especially given that there's a serial killer in the movies. Yeah. But I love that character because she is so straightforward and so joyous, even though she has, she has a lot of shit going on because her husband just left her and she has this kid and she's having panic attacks and all that. But still, the way that she reacts to thinking that Kathy Bates is having an affair and, just that giddiness as she's laughing and how she tries to comfort them and be like, you know what, it doesn't matter if he's gay. You guys can just make it work. I was all in on this, these three characters coming together. Suddenly, it's not just Kathy Bates and Rupert Everett, but Meredith Eaton is also joining them in this hunt for the crossbow killer. It was like, yes, I did not see this coming. It kind of snuck up on us out of nowhere, but I'm all in. If this is what the rest of the movie is gonna be, these three going underground to seek justice, sure, why not?
So they do so. They go underground and try to, penetrate the lair of the crossbow killer. Maudie wears a red raincoat. We get a Don't Look Now reference here, which I certainly wasn't expecting. Are you familiar with Don't Look Now?
No, but my thought was, does Alex know this movie?
It's a horror thriller from the 70s with Donald Sutherland.
So it's what she describes then.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they just like made it up for the movie.
It's funny because in the universe of this, the cops that drive by them are like, did you see that? Have you seen Don't Look Now? One of the cops, by the way, played by Greg Pitts, who will always have a that guy face because he's the guy in Office Space that I'm going to be showing him my O face. He has that famous. It's an unfortunate thing to be saddled with, Mr. Pitts, but that's just kind of what I'm going to know you for. Yeah, they get arrested for, just perusing about where they shouldn't be. And it's a misdemeanor. It's for the gun, I believe, the reason they get arrested, specifically Maudie. And then through this, Dan Aykroyd just wants Kathy Bates back. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that he is now seeing her with a handsome young man. And of course, he's posing now. It's just fucking My Best Friend's Wedding all over again. But it's Kathy Bates instead of Julia Roberts. Instead of America's stepmom, it's America's mom. It's America's grandmom.
They don't have a moment like in My Best Friend's Wedding when they drop the F-bomb. It would have been great if they had, but I guess Kathy Bates is too classy. But you're totally right. And I was worried, Alex, here, because I was like, my thought was that the movie maybe was trying to get me to forgive Dan Aykroyd the way that Kathy Bates clearly wants to forgive him. And I'm not gonna lie, they got pretty close because tell me, how did you feel? Like Aykroyd sits there and I mean, you can tell, I could tell, I don't think Kathy Bates could tell that the main reason that he's trying to get her back is because he's jealous. He just saw her with a dude that looks like Rupert Everett. and he seems to care for her. So, of course, now he wants his wife back. And then he sings.
How far would I travel to be where you are? What is the distance from here to a star? And if I ever...
I love that everybody in this movie sings at some point, but I was not expecting Dan Aykroyd to sing, and he sings for a little bit, and he doesn't sing badly. Did he win you over? Did you suddenly find yourself hoping that they would get back together?
No, and just because he had a change of mind or some shit like that, now that he just sees her thriving, and he's like, "I need that now." It's tough shit, man. He made the decision. You gutted her apartment. You took everything.
She doesn't feel that way though. And that's why I was kind of bummed. I was like, no, Kathy.
Yeah, she just runs right back to him.
Be strong. So I was glad eventually the movie kind of gives her the backbone to kick him to the curb.
So she in effect leaves Dirk to complete the mission on his own. And then he goes and gets a gun and a sparkly suit and goes into the belly of the beast to try to find the killer. This really happens in this movie.
Well, he figures out why Jonathan Pryce got killed. He figures it out first. I would like to think that I figured it out with him. And then Kathy Bates and Meredith Eaton figured out a couple scenes later while they're on the phone. What seems to be happening is that the serial killer is targeting people that sing. So Jonathan Pryce was just like singing in the middle of the night and got shot. And that they figured that out because some of the people that are dwelling underground, they said that some of their own community that have been hunted down were the ones that like to sing. So apparently this killer just has a thing for impromptu singing, which is a very inconvenient thing if you're in a PJ Hogan movie.
So we learn here when he goes down and he has a boombox and he's playing some of Victor Fox's music, this, of course, being Rupert Everett, Dirk Simpson. He's got his gun and he's dressed as, any of the people we named, Barry Manilow, Elton John, Victor Fox. He's down there to attract attention. And we learn that the SARS is not just the window washer, but also the crossbow killer. And what do we do with this information, Julio? Peter Sarsgaard there just gunning down singers with a crossbow.
Were you ready for it, Alex? Were you thinking, well...
I had forgotten he was in the movie at this point. No, I was not ready for what happens.
Yeah, I also didn't, because I didn't know where this fell in Peter Sarsgaard's career. So if, I didn't know if it's just, oh, well, he got a credit because he was there at the beginning. And like today, if I see Peter Sarsgaard in a movie, I'm expecting his presence to have some sort of relevance to the story. So I would have figured out, okay, well, it's either Dan Aykroyd or Peter Sarsgaard. And thankfully they went with Sarsgaard because he can do the stunts. It's good. I mean, they give him something to do because we didn't get enough of him at the beginning. So I'm glad that he gets this juicy monologue that explains that the singing reminds him of his mother, which makes him want to kill.
And he's holding them, at crossbow point. Because by this point, Grace and Maudie have come back to find Dirk, and he's fumbling with his gun. He can't get a handle on it. And there's another dream sequence where Victor comes in and begins singing, and it kind of reenacts how he was shot with the crossbow by Peter Sarsgaard. And I had my note. I'm going through my notes right now. This one says, "What in the absolute fuck is this movie?" So at this point, it literally becomes like a chase of Kathy Bates, Rupert Everett, and Meredith Eaton running away in terror from a crossbow wielding Peter Sarsgaard. And they end up on, I don't know if it's the Chicago Avenue Bridge or the railway bridge, but one of the bridges in downtown Chicago that is, how do you call those? The retractable, movable bridges. I'm trying to think of the technical architectural term for it, but whatever the case, they're on that. And then it starts to, retract upward because there's a boat coming through. So now they're fighting at like this, 45 degree to 90 degree angle.
It's amazing.
And Rupert Everett gets shot in the ass with the crossbow, and he screams out like a girl, which is supposed to, I imagine the thought was that was going to be the one that brought him down in the theater. You know what I mean? That was going to be the line or the moment rather in the movie that the popcorn was thrown in the air and applause, and the old blue hairs were just crying with laughter. And so
for classy people like you and I, it's when Meredith Eaton is falling, and so she holds on to the arrow that's sticking out of Rupert Everett's leg.
And he starts screaming, and then so she falls and grabs Kathy Bates' pantyhose and is like, falling, and as it's stretching. And, this is like the fucking some shit that Tom Cruise would do in Mission Impossible, the way this scene's playing off. And Peter Sarsgaard finally gets to a vertical base, and he's about to shoot the crossbow at, I believe, Kathy Bates. Yeah, he has it pointed at her fucking head. And
Alex,
Meredith,
you didn't know what was going to happen. The movie has taken us on such a wild, unpredictable journey. Did you consider that there was a chance that Peter Sarsgaard would actually murder Kathy Bates here?
Yes. Like I did not, whatever happened after this, I would have been like, yep, that checks out. And what checks out is Meredith Eaton takes out her cell phone to call the cops, and her battery dies. So she's mad. So she throws it in frustration. It hits Peter Sarsgaard in the forehead and knocks him off the bridge, falling into the boat that's passing below, where he goes through like the roof and then takes a table bump. And he kind of smiles and then does, he's bleeding from his face. He does the war movie death, where he just kind of slowly his head tilts and he looks off into the side.
Do you think he died? I didn't think that he died. I thought he just passed out.
That was a hell of a fall he took. So what really would have put it over the top is if the camera panned out and he had been like impaled on something. He's just. And what do you do after this? Well, naturally, you go to a cameo from Sally Jesse Raphael.
Well, they're celebrities now. Before we get into this final bit, Alex, this whole chase sequence, which I love, and it's exciting and it's well shot, and it's certainly unlike anything that PJ Hogan had done up to this point, because we've seen him do just 2 romantic comedies, romantic drama, whatever you want to call it, Mira's Wedding, nothing like this with a maniac chasing innocents and so on. But before the chase happens, it looks like there's going to be a much more peaceful resolution, right? Like what brings about that sort of fantasy sequence with Jonathan Pryce is that Peter Sarsgaard asks Kathy Bates to sing the song that she was singing to her grandkid when he saw her through the window, and she starts singing, and at first she's not sure, but then she gains her confidence, and then Rupert Everett joins, and then Meredith Eaton joins, and then there's the three of them singing, and they kind of get Peter Sarsgaard in the daze.
You came along just like a song and brightened my day. Who'd have believed that you were part of a dream? Now it all seems.
And then he sees Jonathan Pryce, I guess, reenacts or remembers how it was that he killed him, and then he feels guilty, falls to his knees. And so it's almost like I wrote in my notes, I was like, music saves the day. That was it. You know, there was no chase sequence, nothing. It was just them. They started singing, connecting, and even Kathy Bates makes the point of saying, we are like you, we're outcasts, which I thought was, that's what the movie's been setting up, right? Like, she is just this woman that has allowed herself to become nothing. Mm-hmm. And then Rupert Everett is this closeted gay man that has also disappeared. Meredith Eaton, even though she is very out there and very extroverted, she obviously, Kathy Bates describes her as somebody she compares Meredith Eaton being a dwarf as somebody who faces a lot of discrimination or unwanted attention, the way that Rupert Everett faces discrimination and always feels like he's under the microscope in England. And so these are all people that have very difficult lives. And so for the climax to be just them explaining to Peter Sarsgaard that, we're not so different, you and us, I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said, I like the chase scene, but it feels like maybe that's something that was a reshoot. They had the original ending that was just them singing him into defeating him with the power of song. And then they had test screenings and audiences wanting something a little more charged. Like, no, we want to see this guy fall through the roof of a ship. Can you make that happen? And PJ Hogan was like, sure, I can make anything happen in this movie.
That was one of the comment cards just said, can we get someone falling off a bridge? And PJ Hogan's like, let me run with this. So Rupert Everett gets emergency surgery. And in that scene, Kathy Bates from the hospital calls Dan Aykroyd and says, it's over. I need to go my own way. And I guess he accepts that because they are then on the Sally Jesse Raphael show, Monty, Dirk, and Grace. And this is kind of where everything comes to an end as Victor's family's been flown over. So Dirk puts them on the spot to where they can't say no to something of saying, hey, they actually gave me the house and I'm going to turn it into a hostel for gay youths, which is obviously a noble cause. And they know if they say boo about that, then they're going to be vilified. So 0.1 for Rupert Everett there. Maudie now has a Sprint phone sponsorship of some sort. And Sally Jesse Raphael gets a really great deadpan into the camera while she's hawking, while Maudie's hawking the new product. And then Dan Aykroyd has a question from the audience, and they're like, "Who are you?" They were expecting someone of more repute, and then he says he wants to hear Grace sing because he always, poo-pooed her dreams of singing. So she is accompanied by Barry Manilow for some reason.
He'd been waiting
for the entire movie.
He was just in the wings, waiting to come in.
And I Can't Smile Without You is the song they start singing.
It's the same song that she sang to Peter Sarsgaard.
It is, but Julio, do you associate that song with any other movie?
No. Now it's obviously this one, but I don't know. I know I've heard it before. In general, the entire soundtrack of this movie are songs that are not quite my generation, but I think of them as songs that older people listen to. Is that the case, or am I off base?
Well, Barry Manilow, to begin with, has some real whoppers, man. Copacabana, that song. You can't stop me from dancing to that. But for myself personally, Hellboy 2, there's a scene where Ron Perlman sings I Can't Smile Without You. And it is like all these things that I have done or, Never Can Tell from Pulp Fiction. It's just burned into my brain from that one movie. So I know this movie came out years before that, but that's always what I'm going to go to.
You only knew what I'm going through. I just can't smile without you.
Man, that is the most solid case anybody has ever made for me to rewatch Hellboy 2.
Not just Selma Blair?
Well, there's plenty of movies with Selma Blair.
Yeah, my last note is the quote of Dan Aykroyd. I'd like to hear Grace sing. and then Barry Manilow. Because did I miss something? Was there any like real provocation or like build up to Barry Manilow being the big reveal at the end here? Did I miss anything along the way?
There may be some sort of build up as far as the soundtrack goes. There's earlier in the movie when she's going through her records, her Victor Fox records. Is there a Victor covers Barry record? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I was not this music is not my jam. I appreciate it, especially when it's performed as well as it is in this movie. Kathy Bates can sing. I'm assuming that's her. I don't think that she was dubbed, but I don't know. Maybe one final flex from PJ Hogan. Let's bring Manilow here. Why Sally? Did she just win the raffle, or is she specifically the Chicago talk show host?
I don't think she had a Chicago affiliation. It looks like here she was based in St. Louis, but I think just at the time, the late 90s, not when this movie came out, but she had that recognizable face from television. And she also, to my recollection, was always pretty good about like reading the temperature of like a scene or like a show she was in, as far as like how seriously to play it. So I think it was probably just a situation of the stars aligning, as they say, and boy, did the stars align in this. And we get a closing shot of what I believe is supposed to be Jonathan Pryce getting through the gates of heaven in his suit. So
he's being avenged so he can ascend.
What a way to end an unreal movie.
The power of music, Alex, we've been talking about, and we'll talk about this in real talk, but we've been talking about how Bogdanovich is in love with filmmaking, and most of his movies seem to be about filmmaking, love letters to filmmaking. And I think that what we're learning here is that PJ Hogan makes love letters to music. And I'm okay with that. Somebody has to.
And this is one of the more insane movies we've ever covered. Within the same 10 minutes in this movie, Peter Sarsgaard points a crossbow at Kathy Bates' head, and then Kathy Bates is singing with Barry Manilow.
It's just what we needed after Illegally Yours.
Julio, I am rendered mute by this movie. I'm looking forward to this next part. Are you prepared to move on to Real Talk?
Let's go to Real Talk.
I don't know what it is that makes me love you so. I only know I never want to let you go. You started something, oh can't you see, that ever since we met you've had a hold on me. It happens to be